God created us on purpose. And he created us with a wiring that we lean toward rewards. So if your boss with that corporate board, and they're not all right, and if he or she makes you work, but then pays you at the end of the day, how much more God? If you could put that faith in your job, and God is really God, man, you will get through the toughest time, the roughest time. You'll deal with any type of people. You'll deal with any type of work because you know that God is your rewarder. So Naaman shows up with his horses. And in verse 11, watch what happens. But Naaman became furious. He thought he deserved better. But the problem was he heard the command but missed the promise. Like many of us in this room do. We focus on the cause and we give up on the reward. In fact, if we focus on the greatness of the rewards, we'll keep going no matter the cost. The Bible said Jesus endured the shame of the cross for the glory set before him. Because of the reward on the other side, he went through the cross. And his reward was not more of God's presence because God, he'd been with God from eternity past. He's God taken on flesh. So his reward wasn't something God added to him, like added to his deity or anything like that. You know what God added to him? You and I. Yes. Yes. He saw the redeemed. Yes. He saw us coming out of our confusion, coming out of our sin, coming out of our mess. And he hung there and said, I'll take it for what I see on the other side. And you are what hung Jesus on the cross. The reason he stayed there was his love for you. But Naaman became furious. The book of Hebrews says this. It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. But then it goes on. He who comes to God must do two things. Believe that God is, some common or modern translations say, believe that God exists. How many of you believe God exists? Yeah, that's probably 100%, right? But then there's a second clause. We must believe that God exists and that he is a rewarder of them who diligently seek him. So, according to the Bible, in order to have true Bible faith, you cannot just believe God exists. The demons know God exists. The devil believes God exists. Proper theology is not just believing God exists, but it's also believing something about God's character. That he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. The reason we give up is not because we don't believe God exists, but we don't believe there's a reward. We don't believe that there's something better on the other side. We don't believe, like Jesus said, listen, I know y'all think y'all good parents and everything, but y'all being, parents and all the rest, and listen. If your child asks for a bread, would you give him a stone? If he asks you for an egg, would you give him a serpent? Then Jesus goes on, if y'all being evil, that's what Jesus said, that's Jesus. Okay? If you being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven? Jesus believed in a good God. And the issue is you may believe God exists, but you don't believe he's good. Now listen, I don't do what I do today, but back in the day when I had all these other jobs, now in fact, you take me to D.C., I'd probably stop you about 15 times saying, I work there, I work there, I work there, I work there, I work there. I didn't always like my job. I didn't always like the people in my job. But guess what? I had rent and a car note. And I believed that if I put in the work, I was going to get paid on the 1st and the 15th. Now, if I did not believe I was going to get paid, I didn't like my job like that. I didn't like them people like that. I stopped showing up. God created us on purpose. And he created us with a wiring that we lean toward rewards. So if your boss with that corporate board, and they're not all right, and if he or she makes you work, but then pays you at the end of the day, how much more God? If you could put that faith in your job, and God is really God, man, you will get through the toughest time, the roughest time. You'll deal with any type of people. You'll deal with any type of work because you know that God is your rewarder. Matter of fact, in the book of Revelation, I'm going to get back to the message and I'll wrap it up. I'll get out of your hair, but I'm going to hit on you for a second, okay? I'm just lean in a little bit, okay? It's all designed to help. How does the book of Revelation end? Jesus said, behold, I come quickly, and watch this, and my reward is with me. For the believer, Jesus is coming back with reward. For the unbeliever, y'all got some other issues. But out of all the things Jesus said that he was going to bring with him, it was reward. Which lets you know God is in heaven right now thinking about your reward even more than he is your pain. Oh, he cares about your pain, but he's taking you through it because of the reward. Let's get back to the book of Hebrews. It says, he who comes to God must believe God exists. We got that. And conjunction, meaning you got to believe both things about God for it to be Bible faith. And he is a rewarder of them who diligently seek him. And we give up because we don't really believe. If we really believe, we keep pushing. If we really believe that God can reward us, you can't dig a hole deeper than God can get you out of. If you really believed that God got that and he don't miss a thing, the hairs of your head are numbered, his eyes on the sparrow. If you really believe that and he's a rewarder, if you really believe that, you could face anything. Jesus faced the cross. And none of us have yet faced, resisting sin to the shedding of blood and all that. But if Jesus did that for his reward, what is it you have to face in your life for your reward? And what God is saying to us, man up. Endure hardship as good soldiers. Recognize every now and then there's going to be trouble. Life runs on two tracks. You got the good and the bad. And Job said, shall I receive good of the Lord and not ill? And you got to maintain a sense of humor, knowing, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. If I hold on, I will see the reward of God. I'll get through this issue if I'll just trust him. But here's the deal. I'm speaking to you pastorally. You got to trust him. And you got to believe that he's a rewarder. The most unhappy people I know on the earth are Christians that believe God exists, but they don't believe the rest. So all they do is follow rules, ordinances, and commands, and you do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and they're miserable. They're mad at anybody that has fun. Anybody with a smile on their face, they're suspicious. To really have Bible faith, you gotta believe, yeah, God exists, but he's not trying to get something from me, but to me. He is a rewarder. God does not miss a thing. And if you keep trusting and believing him, you will see his rewards in this life and in the age to come. So Naaman became furious. Again, he thought he deserved better. The problem was he heard the command, again, missed the promise, focused on the cost, and Naaman washed 7 times, but he missed the most important part, the promise. The command, and he's focused on the command, go jump in that water, go jump in the lake, really. That's probably where it hit him. But he missed the part, your flesh shall be restored. But Naaman became furious, and he walked away. This is why many of us walk away from God, walk away from worship. We might be saved and die and go to heaven, but we walked away from the church and all the rest for the same reason. Watch what he said. Behold, I thought. Here's the problem. We think instead of seeking God and praying. If God was obligated to our thoughts and our reasonings, we would be his God. We are obligated to his thoughts, his ways, his reasoning, because he is God. And this is what he thought. He said, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. So Naaman was thinking, Elijah, you must not know who I am. I am great, in the land. And God was like, no, Naaman, you don't know who I am. And what Naaman was doing was putting God in a box, saying how God was supposed to do what God wanted to do. And he almost missed God. But you see, this man needed to be cured of a far more deadly disease than leprosy. It was actually his pride. So for that reason, the pastor, if you will, didn't go shake his hand. The pastor sent an attendant to go talk to him. And then he was, taken back. But God was trying to deal with something else. Keep going. Verse 12. I'm going to move quickly. And then he says, are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Which is true. They were cleaner. If you've ever been to the Jordan, it's a brown running river. If I didn't know it was the Jordan, I would never want to get into it. It's just a mess. He said, could I not wash in them and be what? Clean. But God was not trying to give him a wash. God was trying to give him a healing. Yeah. If miracles made sense, we wouldn't call them miracles, we'd call them logics. It's not necessarily the thing we do, but the one we obey that releases the power. So he turned, watch this, and went away in a rage. So he was furious, and this is a powerful man. Now, he probably wanted to reach for a sword because, that's his way. But many of us, we turn away from God for the same reason, because we want God to do things our way. But Jesus is the king of a kingdom. He's not the head of a democracy. You will not always have it your way. You cannot vote him out. He's not asking you whether or not you think it should be this way. God is God, and he's the king. How many of y'all are old enough to remember Burger King commercials? Have it your way. God is saying that this is not Burger King. You cannot and will not have it your way. And his servant came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, you wouldn't have done it. And basically what he's saying, and by the way, we need friends like this. People to talk us out of stupid. How many of y'all got a little stupid left? I know I do. Yeah. Talk you off the ledge. And he was like, hey, dude, and he was respectful. He called him father and everything. You don't have to be disrespectful. Sometimes you get a little correction in you, and then you're going to talk down to people. Don't do that. He still honored the guy and treated him like a human being. You call him a father, but it's like he had to talk him off the ledge here. He was like, listen, if God wanted you to climb a mountain, build a city, or fight a war, you would have done it because you're that type of guy. But because God didn't ask you to do something that puts your great abilities on display, you're upset. How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? All of us need friends like this. You need Sundays like this where I'm not preaching you happy, I'm preaching on your final nerve to try to move you to a place of obedience. But watch what happened because of that friend. He was furious. He was in a rage. But because of that friend, he went down. Yes. You see, the test was not whether or not Naaman could figure everything out. The test was whether or not Naaman would obey. The test is not whether or not you can figure everything out. It's whether or not you'll trust him and obey. So he went down, and watch this, I'm almost there, and dipped 7 times. This is a big point. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time. Sometimes it doesn't work the second time. I mean, and God really told you. And then it doesn't work the third time. I remember Elisha had prayed for a drought, and it stopped raining. And the Bible said he had to send his servant back to the edge of the mountain to look for a cloud 7 times before he saw anything. And then when he saw something, it wasn't even big. It was a cloud the size of a man's fist, a man's hand. And sometimes it takes more than one. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3. And then we get to 5. It's like, I must not have heard God. But let me tell you, that's the story of my life. I can't tell you how many things that I started and wasn't successful at first. But I had to keep showing up. Sunday after Sunday, Wednesday after Wednesday, council session after council session. You hear what I'm saying? Issue after issue, prayer meeting after prayer meeting. It said after he dipped, how many times? 7 times in the Jordan, in the dirty Jordan. Sometimes God, I don't understand his ways, but he could put us in a little dirty situation, and we gotta surround ourselves with things that aren't comfortable, things that aren't pleasant, and that's part of the way, God does things at times to humble us. So he went down and dipped 7 times, not the 5th time, not the 6th time. And some of y'all want to give up on 3, 4, 5. And God's saying, hang on now. Now listen, I am God. I have spoken to you. Keep doing it till I'm done. You hear what I'm saying? And he said, he did this according to the saying of the man of God. He's called a man of God because he had God's voice. And basically what happened is his name was like, I don't get it. Matter of fact, Elijah sometimes had a bad attitude. I don't even like the preacher's attitude, but I hear God. And because he heard God, he obeyed. And here's the deal. Here's the reason I preach this message today. Because I believe the Lord spoke to my heart. He said, all of us, whether you're live streaming, I don't care if you watch this next week on YouTube or something, all of us, everyone listening to this message knows what to do next. You see, we all know we need God. Even before God reaches out to us, but it's only those who respond that step into the blessing of relationship. And there are many things that we know, but we don't do. And all of us, we know what we're to do next. But because it doesn't make sense in our minds, because it doesn't make sense perhaps in our social circle, maybe it doesn't make sense as it relates to what they're saying in culture, in the eyes of the world. Maybe because you think it should go a different way, you do nothing. But as you do nothing, you stay leprous. Isaiah 1:19 gives us a promise. You don't have to be special to get free. It says, if you are willing, didn't say you need to be smart. Didn't say you need to be talented. Didn't say you had to have a lot of friends. If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good of the land. I'm trying to close. Just give me a second. There were 12 men in a boat, but only one man got out of the boat when Jesus said, come. And there is power. Now, thank God, in the boat, God saved them from the storm. But that next level of miracle didn't happen until they stepped out of the boat. And God did some first level things for you. That's great. But if you want to step into the next level, you are going to have to get out of the boat. You're going to have to leave some folk behind. You hear what I'm saying? And you're going to have to walk toward your Jesus. The power of God is there, but you won't experience it in the boat. It'll only be experienced when you step out. And here's the big deal. When Naaman got over himself, and come on, that's the deal with it. We got to get over ourselves, get over our opinions, the way we think somebody should be and how things are supposed to be done. When he got over himself and actually did it, his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. So his skin was restored like a child because he was willing to trust God like a child. My big point today is we make life too complicated. God does not require us to figure it out. He just wants us to obey. Give God a hallelujah.